Okay, fair enough.
So
That's
I'm
all.
recording. Thanks for reminding me that, Kieran.
Because we haven't got Higgy here.
Okay, so now just on the video, on the last email I sent you as well. Now I had all this done out on a website and everything, but unfortunately my website went down this evening, so I had to resort to Zoom and I had to resort to Google Drive. All right, I sent you a link to a Google Drive folder, and on that Google Drive folder you will find this video and a few other videos. Going forward, every lecture we're going to be doing is going to be a videoing as well, and the code. All right, and the code. I will explain at the end of this how you're going to integrate the code into your own Eclipse. All right. Now, so here's our Eclipse screen. All right. Now I'm assuming that you've watched the video, that you've set up Eclipse, that you've downloaded something called PyDev, and you've got PyDev working on it. It's relatively simple, straightforward process. There's nothing complicated. You just download Eclipse. You just download those other pieces of software called PyDev, and it works. Okay, nothing complicated about that. All right. Now, so we're going to create. I'll just minimize stuff here. So we're going to create our first project. Now we're going to be dividing all of our code into what are called chapters, and they're going to be in different sections. All right. So so this is Eclipse. All right. So I'll just go briefly through some of the aspects of it first. This is where you write your code. Okay, this is where we're going to be writing our code.
Yeah.
Okay. When we write our code, we're going to be running it. When we're running it, we're going to see an output here. This is your console. It's called a console. Okay. What you see up here, these are all the projects we've already created. All right, so I have something called first project, I have something called sample game, I have something called section 1. When you have a project done, I'll just close off these guys. So this is section 1, for instance. You can see the little arrows there. Okay, so that is the guy we're going to be working on, main.py. Now we are going to create our first project. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go inside the white space here. Where am I going? Oops, wrong one again. Inside here. And I am going to right click. I'm going to click on new. Now, none of those guys. So I click on, so I do that again, right click, new. I go down to other. All right. Now, so you've got loads of things here, but I know what I want. I want something called PyDev. So what we're going to be creating is something called a PyDev project. Okay, it's quite simply a Python program. Okay, is everyone with me so far? Yes? Everyone okay? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Click on PyDev project, click on next. All right, now, all of these things down here, all of this, you don't have to bother with. All right, don't have to bother anything with that. All right, just leave everything as is. As we do progress, we will be maybe looking at some of these things. But to start off with, you don't have to bother with any of that down here. All we care about is the project name. Okay, all we care about is the project name. So this is going to be, I'm going to call this by the name CHAP chap 1, point 1. I'm going to say COMMENTS. Okay, so what is the name of that? It is chap 1, point 1, comments. Okay, all right, so that entered. Then I click on finish. Okay, now, so we can see it up here. Chap 1.1 comments. Now, there's nothing inside it. Okay, now make sure we click on chap 1.1. I go right click. I go new. I go PyDev module. Okay, PyDev module. I do that again. I go right click. I go new. I go PyDev module. All right, now don't bother with package for now. I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put in name. So I'm going to call it M-A-I-N. So it's capital M-A-I-N. Now you can call this, so this is going to be your Python file. Now they're not called files in Python, they're called modules, but they're files, okay? So when they use the term modules, they're really talking about files, all right? Now, so the name of our file is going to be called main. You can call it anything you want, but I'm going to call it main. Later on, you'll see there's a reason why I'm calling it that, all right? But for now, so this is going to be our first program. So just click on name, put in main, M-A-I-N, and then I click on finish. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Don't care about that shit. Right, now, so you're given a couple of choices of templates. Now, templates are scaffolds. Templates are you want to, for instance, there's a class template, there's something called a main template. We don't want anything in our Python file, okay? So we're just going to have an empty Python file. We're going to put everything into it. So I click on empty, I click on OK. Get rid of that guy, all right? Now, by the way, can everyone see the screen okay? Is the text big enough or shall I make it bigger?
Fine, perfect.
Okay, all right. Now, so we're going to start off very, very easy. Now, the first thing we're going to start off with is we're going to start off with something called comments. All right, now this is where we type. Okay, this is where we type in Python. All right, so on and so forth. Now, the first thing we need to know about is something called a comment. Now, anything you type in here is treated as Python code. All right, anything you type in there is going to be treated as Python code. Now, as you can see there, when I type in rubbish, we get all these red marks. All right, and I type in rubbish in here, you get all these red marks. That means it doesn't recognize it as Python code. All right, if it doesn't recognize it as Python code, it'll try to underline it in red, and also it'll give you a little red X here. Okay, so if you just type up rubbish, it doesn't recognize it as Python code, it won't run, it won't compile. All right, we're talking about something called compiling. It won't compile. Compiling is changing this stuff into computer code that the computer can understand. We understand this stuff, the machine doesn't it. So it has to compile it first, then it runs it. All right, so it can say, right, hold on, this is not Python code, and it'll mark the line. Now, it can also, in certain circumstances, tell you what the error is. All right, so anything you type in here, inside here, is going to be treated as Python code. But there is an exception, okay? The exception is something called comments. All right, now, the first thing you should always learn in every computer programming language is how to comment. You'll notice up here, so I'll just say that again. You'll notice up here that this guy is not coming up as being red. All right, this guy here is not coming up as being red. There's no little red X here. All right, the reason being is because that is a comment. Okay, that is a comment. Now, what are comments for? You should always comment your code. All right, there's two types. Well, there's two types of comments in Python. The first type of comment in Python is a single line comment, which is this guy. It's the hash symbol. Okay, so what is this guy? Comments. Now, what are comments used for? So I am going to do this. So I'll copy this other code I have here. Comments. So bear with me a second here. So this is a single line comment. So what are they? Comments are used in all computer programming languages to explain what your code is doing, make your code more readable. Because a lot of the time what you're going to be doing is so complicated, you could become along doing a bit of code, 5 minutes later you look at the code, you don't know what it's doing. That is very common thing to be happening. So when we're starting off, every line of code we're going to be doing in Java is going to be commented. Okay, now these are single line comments. Single line comments consist of the hash symbol followed by whatever comment you have. All right, now I'm not getting any red X, as we can see here. There's no red X anywhere along there, which means it's ignored. Okay, so Python ignores it. All right, now, so they're single line comments. Everyone okay with that so far? Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, so now technically there is no multi-line comments. Now, what's multi-line comments? Now, single line comments, every line of comments you have to have a hash in front of it. All right. Now, these are multi-line comments in Python. Now, what these are, so everything between the opening 3 double quotes and the closing 3 double quotes is comment. Okay, so everything between the opening 3 double quotes and the closing 3 double quotes is a comment. Now it's not 3 single quotes, it's 3 double quotes. It's this guy. 1, 2, 3. Okay, notice how it's gone green. We're not getting an error. So that is a multi-line comment. Now, when we're coming along later, we will find that this actually isn't a comment. It's treated as a comment here. It's actually something called a multi-line string that is automatically garbage collected. You don't need to know what that is. All right. For now, all we need to know is that this is a handy way for us to put comments over multiple lines. If I wanted to do the same thing again by using the hash symbol, I'd have to put a hash symbol here for this guy. And then I'd have to put a hash symbol for this guy. And I have to put a hash symbol for the last guy. Okay, so if you have a long comment, and sometimes your comments can be very long, use something like that. Now, as well as doing 3 double quotes, you can also do 3 single quotes. So it's this guy, and that guy. Okay, so the 3 single quotes can also be used as a multi-line comment in Python. Okay, great. So I'm going to be using these an awful lot. Okay, for every line of code. Now the notes that's can be provided for the course are going to be these comments. All right, so we're going to have our code, and in our code we're going to have a comment for every line of code. All right, we're going to have a comment for every line of code. So these where the notes are going to be. All right, the notes aren't going to be in a separate file. The notes are going to be in your code. All right, it's easier, so you won't have to be swapped in between screens. Also, you have a line of code, you have an explanation of what's happening and how it works. All right, now, so we are going to write our first piece of code. So everything up to this, nothing's happening. Okay, everything up to this, nothing is happening. So we are going to do a print statement. Now, so I'll type print. Now you'll notice as I'm typing, you'll see, let's watch this again. So I go print. Okay, you can see all these different suggestions that are coming up on the screen. Okay, as you get better at using Eclipse, you will start to use these things more often. But we're just starting off with Eclipse, so we're just going to type up print. Okay, it's the opening brace and the closing brace. Now, what is this? So this is a print statement, and anything within the opening and closing braces, sorry, is printed to screen. Okay, sorry about that. And I'll just make this a bit wider. Now, you can see up, I put the comment at the end of the line. All right, I can put that hash symbol. If I put the hash symbol in here, everything after or is commented. So the hash symbol will comment out everything after it. Everyone okay with that? Yes? Okay. All right. Now, so we are going to put up our first statement. So print. This is what every computer programming course starts off with. I don't know why, but it just is. Now, as we're typing along, if I want to run this, I can go file. I can go, no, so I'll just hello world. Right. So I can go file. I can go save. All right. And then I can go click on this little icon up here. Okay. It's that icon there. It's got it's a little green circle with a white triangle inside it. That usually means play or run or something like that. In this case, it means run. So I click on that guy there. Then I click on select run main py. I'm not doing Python unit tests. We will be using it though. So I'm going to go Python run. I click on OK. There's hello world printed out. Okay. I'm going to print off a second print statement. Print. This is our Python course. Okay. Now, rather than doing, so I'll just get rid of all of this. Now, rather than going up here, press save and then run it by clicking this guy, we can press keystrokes on the keyboard. Okay. Now, to save a file. Now, before you run a file, you have to save it. So every line of code you write, you save it, and then you run it. Okay. So every line of code, you save it, you run it. Now, as you get better, obviously, you're going to write a couple of lines of code, and then you save it and you run it. But you always save it before you run it. Is everyone with me so far? Yes? Is that okay? Right.
Yeah.
Now, there is a keystroke on your keyboard to save it. The keystroke is Control plus S. That will save it after pressing it there. If I want to run it, it's Control plus F11. Why it's F11, I don't know, but that's the keystroke. So I've saved it. Now I'm going to run it. Control F11. Okay, my F11 isn't working. Okay. There it is. This is our Python course. Run it again. Okay, so Control S. What does Control S does? Control S.
Saves.
Yeah. Control F11. Run. Yeah. Okay. So every time you want to run your code, you have to save it first. Okay. If you don't save it first, it's going to run the old code. All right. So every time you're running your code, you have to save it first. The easiest way to do that is Control S, Control F11. Okay. All right. So fine. Nothing too difficult here. Now, we're going to show you another usage for comments. All right. So at the end of this here, this code will print out fine. Okay, now I'm going to put in another comment in here. Okay, this will not print out. Now, if you're writing some code and you're thinking, I don't want that, but I might use it again in future, right? My advice is to not delete code, is to comment it out. Okay, I'll show you that again. So we can see these are first 2 lines of code. This is our 3rd line of code. Now, if I go Control S, Control F11, you can see this will not print out. So just to show you where what is where, that is that guy, that is that guy, that is that guy. Okay. Now, I've decided I don't want to run this line of code. I don't delete it. So usually you don't delete code. Code that you use, you usually don't delete it. All right. What you usually do instead is you comment it out. All right. So now if I run the code again, Control S, Control F11, it's no longer there. It's still in the code, but it's now a comment. Okay. So I'll just put in the comment after that. Oops. So commenting can be used to make sure certain code does not run. Okay. And if you wanted to make it run, you just take out the comment and it runs. Okay. So as I said before, this is the console. Now, the format of the print statement is print. Now, this is something called a function. Okay, this is the print function. And what does it do? Whatever is inside the braces is going to print it out. Now, if it's going to be text, and in computer programming, text is called a string. Okay, so in computer programming, text is called a string. All right, so I am going to print off. I'll just make myself a bit more space here. Oops, sorry about that. Print. Now, and this is our bracket. Now, if you have a piece of text, what you do with the piece of text is you surround it either with double quotes or single quotes. Okay. It can be either single or double quotes. All right. It doesn't have to be double quotes. But as soon as you're surrounded with either single quotes or double quotes, it becomes something called a string. Okay. So we go print hello world. We'll print off the string hello world. We go print. This is a string. It's surrounded by double quotation marks. It'll print off. This is our Python course. And the last one, which I'm going to comment out, this guy, it's gone. Okay. Now, a couple of things. Is everyone okay so far? Is that all right? Nothing too difficult. Yeah. Okay. Now, one thing. I'm going to put this in block. Always comment your code. Good code is well commented code. In actual fact, you can't overcomment. Okay. Now, when we're doing this course, we're actually going to have more comments than code. All right. Comments are good because if you're doing any sort of software development, you're not going to be just coding for yourself. You're going to, other people are going to be looking at your code. Okay. I'm going to put in a print statement here at the very end. Now, as well, Python is case sensitive. So the command is print, not print. I shouldn't work anyway. Let me just see. Yeah, see that there? Okay, so that is not the same as that. So Python is case sensitive. So case matters. All right. That is not the correct function. This is the correct function. It's lowercase print. If I come along and if I make a capital P, and there's the print, that will also not work. Okay. You can see print some text, something called a name error. All right. So it's not print. I'll just comment that guy out. It is print. This is the end of this file. There it is. Okay. And I'll put the comment in here. Python is case sensitive. So it's lowercase print and not or whatever. Okay, so it's all lowercase print. Everyone okay with me so far? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, nothing too difficult. All right, now we had to get comments out of the way. So just a second now. Okay, yeah, if any of you have a question, you can ask it out in the room. All right, there's no need to go typing it up. I can answer questions in the room. All right, now, so now, that is the first PyDev project done. So we are going to create a second PyDev project. All right, now, so next one. I'm going to go a right click in here. I'm going to click on new. I'm going to go to other, and it is PyDev project. If you can't see it there, you just type in PYD, and it is PyDev project. Click on next. Now, this is going to be chap 1.2 variables introduction. Click on. So that is called, I'll put it right up here on the screen. This is chap 1.2 variables introduction. Yes, my writing is terrible. I know. Cat. Okay. So chap 1.2 variables introduction. I click on finish. Okay. Then I make sure I click on the chap 1.2 variable introductions folder, right click, click on new. Now, this time I'm going to introduce you to something called a package. All right. All a package is, it's just another folder. So we can see in chap 1.1, there's no folders. Now, never mind all this stuff down here. I ignore that for now. We can see there's just something called main.py. That is the main file that we created. Now we are going to create another folder inside here. Why we do that will be explained after the 5th lecture. Okay. But for now, every time from this moment onwards, when we create a Python project, we're going to create something called a package inside it. It's just a folder. Okay, so we click on chap 1.2 variables introduction, right click, I go to new. All right, I'll go to other. And we can see here, it's PyDev package. If you can't find it, I just type in the wizard, PYDEV, and we can see PyDev package. Okay, click on next. So I'm going to give it a name. Now the name I'm going to make, now you usually go lowercase, Android. All right, because hopefully by the end of this course, we will be doing a small bit of app development, hopefully. Okay, so Android is going to be the name of the folder. Click on finish. So we can now see we have chap 1.2, which is this guy up here. And we can see inside that there's a folder called Android. Okay, so the folder is called Android. All right. Now, and there is a file inside there already. Now, we're not going to be using this yet. We will be using it later on. All right. So we are going to create our main file inside here. So I'm going to right click on the Android package. I'm going to click on New. If you can't find it there, you just click on Other and PyDev module in case it doesn't come up your screen. So I'll go through it again. PyDev module, click on that guy, click on Next. So source folder, yeah, package, Android. So I'm going to call it MAIN. I'm going to click on Finish. Template, I want an empty template. Okay, that's fine. Now, so here's one other thing. You can have many files open at the one time. Okay, you can have many files open at the one time up here on the top. Now, this is the file we were after creating in chap 1.1, main. This is now the new main in chap 1.2. So we can see there's two different ones there. You will find as you're going along, we're going to be creating our own classes. Our own classes are going to be in their own module. So you're going to have 5 or 6 of them open across your screen. But for now, we're just going to have one open at a time. So this is from the previous one. We're going to close that. So now we can see here, chap 1.2, the little arrows. Click on the little arrow. You'll see Android. Click on the little arrow beside Android. We see init.py. What is an init.py? Init.py is basically for housing something called your constructors. Not going to go near them yet. Not for another week or two. Okay, so main. This is the file which is going to have all of our information. Okay, now, so I'm going to put in a comment in here. So what is this about? This is variables. Sorry. Variables. Now, so we're going to do 2 print statements again. So you can see as I'm typing along, all these suggestions are coming up. Print. So I'm going to say this prints out a line of text. Print. This prints out a second line of text. Now, those that are coming from other programming languages, no semicolon there. Okay, I know some of you have done other programming languages, and this is where you start to see the difference with Python. You don't put anything you don't put a full stop, you don't put a semicolon. In other programming languages such as C#, such as Java, you have to put that guy at the end. Okay, you put nothing at the end of a Python statement. Okay, now so I'll go here. So strings are text that is surrounded by double or single quotation marks. Print statement. Okay. Now, so when you have double quotation marks around a piece of text, that means it's a string. Now, if I try to print off a piece of text without quotation marks, okay, we can see that it recognizes, now not, so all the keywords in Python, they're going to be usually in blue. Okay, everything is color coded. So there is a command in Python called not. There is a command in Python called print. There is no command called this. And those from other programming languages will be surprised at that. There is no command called this. There is no command called will. There is no command called out. All right. This is not a piece of text. However, as soon as I put, let's say, single quotation marks this time, as soon as I do that, it's treated as a piece of text. Okay. So I'll do that again. So it's Control S, Control F11. First time I run it, you get this little dialog that comes up here. We click on Python run. It's only the first time you run it, the first time you're in your program after you're starting up Eclipse. Click on OK. And then we can see there is our 3 lines of text. Is everyone okay so far? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah? Right.
Yeah.
So the first thing we're going to do, so just printing off text, no real big issue. Okay. Now, using numbers. Okay, so I'm going to say using numbers. So if I go print 54. Okay. Now you'll notice there I'm not getting an error. All right. You'll notice there I'm not getting an error because this is not a string. Okay. This is a number. All right. Python automatically recognizes numbers. Right. So it automatically recognizes this as the number 54. So put in here. Python automatically recognizes numbers. Okay. Python automatically recognizes numbers. It also does this print, let's say 23 plus 56. Okay. Python automatically recognizes all mathematical functions. Okay, so this will print off 54. This will print off 89. No, what am I saying? 79. Okay, so Python automatically recognizes all mathematical functions. So that's addition. 79. Okay, next one. I go to multiplication. Now, if you look on the keyboard, you'll see there, it looks like there's no multiplication symbol. There is. Okay, so I'm going to do 12 multiply. That is the multiplication symbol. Okay, 12 multiplied by 20. Okay, so the multiplication symbol is that guy, which is shift 8. Okay, so what will this print? So we'll print out 240. So Control S, Control F11. Okay, now, so that is addition, that is multiplication. We can also do division. Print 120 divided by 10. Now, that's the division symbol. Okay, so the division symbol is the /. Okay, now these are common across all computer programming languages. All right, so it recognizes plus, it recognizes multiply, it recognizes minus. 120 minus 75, so this will print 12. This guy will print 75.
It's allowed to float also, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. We'll come to floats in a minute, Priya.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, now, so thanks for bringing that up. Right now, so I'll just say this is a subtraction symbol. Now, so we can see the answers here. 54 is printed off to start off with, then 23 plus 56, which is going to be 79, then 12 multiplied by 20 is 240. Now you'll notice when I do this guy here, it changes. All right. Now it's still 12, but it becomes 12.0 because there is two different classes of numbers in Python. In other programming languages, there is more. In Python, there's only two, all right? The first type of number is something called an int, okay? What's an int? An int is a number with more decimal places, okay? 2, 4, 22. They're all ints, okay? The second type of number is something called a float. Now, a float is a number with a decimal place. Now, if you divide one number by another number, it automatically becomes a float. Notice how the answer isn't, let's get rid of some of this. Okay, so this guy. Okay, now the answer is 12. But you notice all the other answers have no decimal places. 240, 75. The only one that has a decimal place is this guy here. Okay, it's because that guy, when you divide one number by another number, the answer will always have a point, it will have a decimal place in it, even if it's 12.0. Now, 12.0 is the same as 12, all right? However, whenever you divide by a number, in Python, the answer will always be a float, all right? Now, that is different from other computer programming languages as well, all right? I know some of you have done Java here, so it is different. So whenever, so I'll put this in here. So I'll put in the comments, I'll take out this guy. So, and I'll just make myself a bit more space. Whenever, make this a multi-line comment. So, whenever you divide by a number in Python, the answer will be something called a float. A float is a number that has decimal places. Now, the obvious reason for this is right, so 20 divided by 10 is going to give us 12, all right? But if I divide it by 15, okay, 8 15s, 16, that should be okay, 7.5, okay, 7.5. So this takes into account, that's why it's a float. Now, that is not the case with most programming languages, all right? That is not the case with most, oh, I'll just, my camera's a bit sideways. That is not the case of most programming languages. So you can see 120 divided by 16 gives us 7.5. Now I'm going to change that back to 10. It gives us 12.0. Okay. Even though it's a 12, it's still going to come back as something called a float. Now, floats and ints are different. The most important difference when it comes to computer programming is everything you do on in programming takes up space. An int takes up something called a byte. Now, I don't know, does it take a byte of space? Okay. A float could take up 4 bytes. Okay, so a float does take up more spaces. Now, it doesn't make much difference if you're dealing with 10, 12, 1,000. But if you're dealing with billions and billions of numbers, you will notice the difference. Okay, if you're dealing with billions of numbers, and if you're doing, particularly if you're doing encryption, you are going to be dealing with billions of numbers. If you're doing anything in artificial intelligence, in actual fact, Python is the #1 language for artificial intelligence. All right, you will be dealing with billions and billions of numbers. So if you're dealing with billions of these guys, it's going to take longer than billions of these guys. Okay. So everyone with me so far? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So 10 divided by 120 divided by 10 is going to give us 12.0. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So I'll take that out. I'm going to go beneath that. I'm going to go print 120 divided by 16 is going to give us 7.5. So I'll say about floats are larger, sorry, use more memory space than ints. Okay, that's seems to be fine so far. Okay, now, so we're going along here going numbers and we're doing all sorts of calculations with it. Okay, now, so we can see when we're using strings, we have double quotes around it up here. When we're using strings, when we're using strings, we have double quotes around it. We're using numbers, we don't have any double quotes. However, if we put double quotes around a number, so let's go 45 plus 99. It'll print off 45 plus 99 because this is no longer, that's no longer a number. That is now a string. As soon as you put double quotes or on the next line, that guy, put on the next line here, print. I'm going to put single quotes. I'm going to say 99 divided by 10. Okay, now they are not numbers. I can put a number. It's a number by itself. Put double quotes around it. Okay, now they are not numbers. Okay, they are strings. Why are there strings? Because we got those guys around it. Okay, so if you have either single quotes or double quotes around something, they are strings. In this case here, that is not the calculation 45 plus 99. It's a piece of text that contains those characters, right? They're not treated as numbers. They're treated as the same as A, B, C. Everyone with me so far? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is not a number. That is a string. Okay, so I'll put that in here. Put in a comment. Put in a multi-line comment. Now, so as soon as you put single or double, let's have a bit more space here. Single or double quotes around a, hold on a minute. Someone else there joining in. How you doing there? As soon as you put single or double quotes around a number or a calculation, it ceases to be a number or a calculation. It is then merely string. Okay, so this guy is the string that contains some numbers. Numbers. Okay, this guy here, this is a string that contains numbers and symbols, contains numbers and symbols. Okay, this one here, numbers and symbols. And the last one here, this is a string that contains numbers and symbols. Okay, so as soon as you put single or double quotes around something, they're no longer a number. Now there's going to be something else called Booleans we're going to be using as well. All right, we're going to be using Booleans as well. Boolean in Python is true or false. All right, true or false. Now, so if I print off that guy, that's not the number 120. Just put it out here. Okay, that's not the number 120 printing off. It's a string that contains that symbol, and that symbol. They don't do, it's not treated as a number. This guy here, that is not 99 divided by 10. That is a string that contains that symbol, that symbol, that symbol, that symbol, that symbol. And it makes no difference if you put in A, B, C. How do we do? Okay, because that's all treated as a piece of text. Everyone okay with that? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so, now, as well as Python knowing the basic addition, subtraction, all that sort of thing, it also knows precedence. Now, what do I mean by precedence? I actually should have put this up here, okay? So I jumped the gun there a bit, okay? So what is precedence? So I'll just put in a, now if I do this, that puts in a blank line, okay? If I go print, nothing in it, there's our blank line, okay? So if I put print, nothing in it, it's a blank line. So print, precedence. Right, I'm going to do a calculation. Print. So 5 plus 30. You see a lot of these on Facebook. What's the answer to that?
10.
10.
10.
Yeah, 10. Okay, because it's 30 divided by 6, which is 5 plus 5 is 10. All right, so we're going here. So what's the rules of precedence? The rules is brackets first, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. All right, so brackets first, then multiplication, division, then addition and subtraction. Now that's the, there is BOMDAS, I can't remember it, but that's all we need to know. Now, we don't even need to know those rules because Python knows those rules, all right? So Python knows those rules. So if I go here, we can see that it's 6 divided by 30. Now 6 or 30 divided by 6 is going to give us 5.0 as soon as you do. So I'll just write it out here. Okay, so we have 30 divided by 6 because that's division. That gives us 5.0. Okay, then you add 5 onto it. Now, when you so 5 is an int, 5.0 is a float. When you add up a float and an int, the whole lot of it becomes a float. So it's 5 plus 5.0 gives us 10.0. Everyone with me so far, yes?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Now, it knows all these rules automatically. All right, you don't have to tell it how to do this. Okay, so if you don't know how to work it out, you could just plug it into Eclipse and it does it for you. All right. So put it out here. Clear all drawings. So this will 30 divided by 6 is 5.0, and 5 plus 5.0 is 10.0. Okay, so it knows precedence. You don't have to tell it the precedence. All right, and just like this guy up here, if I came down here and I go print, my double quotation marks, I put all this inside double quotation marks. It'll print off the string. Won't print off the actual numbers. Why? Because this is a string containing all these characters. They don't mean anything to the machine. Okay. Whereas this guy means the number 5. This guy is the addition symbol. This guy means the number 30. This is the division symbol. This is the number 6. Whereas this is just a pile of characters that mean absolutely nothing to Python. Everyone okay with that so far? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, so it's all very well fine to do all these sort of, now these are what are called hard-coded values. Okay. Right? Hard-coded values are actual values you put into the program yourself. All right. So I put in the number 120 and I put in the number 10. Now, in real world programming, we very, very rarely do that. All right. In actual fact, you could count on the fingers of one hand how many times you have to do this in a year. All right. You don't usually use raw numbers. What you use instead are something called variables. I'm going to put in a blank space in here. All right. Now, so I'm going to start off. Now, I have a big long comment here, but I'm going to just start off doing a variable before we go any further. All right. So I'll do the actual coding first, and then I'll put in the comment. All right. Now, so the variable is made up of 2 distinct parts. It's made up of a name. All right. A name, or to give its more proper title, is reference. Okay. It's made up of a reference, and the reference goes on the left-hand side. Now this is the case in all computer programming languages. Okay. Now, to those that are coming from other computer programming languages, there is no type. You don't have to define a type in Python. All right. So those that are coming from other programming languages, you don't have a type in Python. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is I want this to be a full number. You would have to say in the likes of Java. You'd have to go int num. You don't have to do that in Python. You just give it a name. And so the name, which we call, the proper term in computer programming, is reference. Reference goes on the left-hand side. Now, this guy, that is not the equals to sign. All right. That is not the equals to sign. That is something called the assignment operator. Okay. Very common error that people think that is equal to. That is not equal to. That is the assignment operator. And what goes after that then is the value. So num is going to be equal to the number 56. I'm going to save that. Okay. Now, that means anywhere we use num, it's going to print off the value 56 to prove it. come along here. I'm going to print. I'm going to go num. What's that printing off? It's printing 56. Now, the beauty of a variable is, I spelled that wrong, variables. Now, oh, God bless us. It's tough, I know. So, now, the beauty of variables is, as the name hints at, is that variables can change. Okay, so here, this is the value of 56. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to change the value of this variable to 100. And I print it again. So I go num. Now, so this is giving us a new value of 100. So this will print off. So variables, so we assign 56. All right. Now you actually read it from right to left. You write it from left to right, but you read it from right to left. That will become a part of why you do that. So we're assigning the number 56 to the reference num. So that means num represents that number. Okay. I'm assigning the number 100 to the reference num. So now num is 100. So a variable does exactly as it says in the tin. You can change the value of a variable. This is what you use when you're doing your calculations. Now, this is not hard-coded values. A variable can, as its very nature, can change. As its name suggests, it can change. All right. So here, so up at this point, has a value of 56. Okay. And if I print it off a few times more, so if I print it off another time, let's print it off a second time. It'll also print off 56. However, I come along here and I change the value. So from this point onwards, num is going to be 100. Okay. So put it in here. From this point onwards, value of num will be 100. Okay. Now, so I'm going to put in a long comment here. Done here on the other side. I'll put it in here. So I'll take this out here and I'll just run through it quickly. Instead of using hard-coded values, which is something we do when we put in actual numbers as above, we usually use variables. Variables are used in every computer language, and in every language consist of a name, which is also called a reference, and a value. We can then use that reference to refer to the value, and crucially, Jesus Christ, my spelling is terrible. U-C-I-L-L-Y. This value can also change. So the name variable means we can change it. So I'll change this to 45. We declare a variable num that will hold the value 45. The name of the variable goes on the left-hand side. Here, the variable has the name reference of num. On the right-hand side, we give the variable a value. Here, the value is the number 45. We use the assignment operator. That does the assignment operator to assign the value of 45 to the variable reference num. The assignment operator is not the equals to symbol in this scenario. It is used for giving a value to a variable reference. Okay. Now, you have to give a value to a reference at the same time. What do I mean by that? So if I come along down here and I create another variable called num2. Easy, keep doing that. Num2. All right. Now, if I just do something like that, and if I try to do it in the second line, then num2 is equal to 100. Now, you can do that in other programming languages. You can't do it in Python. Okay. You have to, as soon as you declare a variable in Python, you have to give it a value. So I'll say it in here. As soon as you declare a variable in Python, you have to give it a value. Okay, so this guy will not compile as has. So as soon as you declare a variable, you have to give a value on the same line. All right, this will not compile as you have not given it a value. Okay. Now let's go down here. So is everyone with me so far? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have variables. Variables made up quite simply of a name and a value. Okay. It's made up of name and a value. Okay. Now, as I said it as well, variables.
I'm doing something new.
Okay. Variables can change. Okay. Hence the name. All right. The variables can change, hence the name. So I've changed it to 100. That means from this point forward, it's going to be 100. Now, when we come to something called loops, your variables, by the way, will usually change values thousands of times. If you open up an application on your phone, let's say you open up Netflix on your phone, all right? There is millions of variables there, and each one of those millions of variables change their values thousands of times every second. All right. So variables are made to change. Okay. Variables are made to change. So we'll print out 5. It's not 56. So as I'll say here, variables are made to change, are made and meant to change. All right, that's what they're for. Now, so we have got, I'm going to change the value of num. Okay, I'm going to change the value of num back to 50. All right, so wherever we use num2, the value 100 will be used. This one here, wherever we use num, the value 50 will be used. All right. Now, so what I'm going to do is now is we're going to, you know how to print off a piece of text. All right. How do we print off a piece of text and a number? All right. How do we print off a piece of text and a number? Now, there is a number of ways of doing this. First of all, I'm going to show you a shortcut to do it. Now, it's not necessarily the right way to do it. All right. This is not necessarily the right way to do it. All right. But the right way to do it uses something called casting, which is a bit more advanced. I don't want to put that on top of you yet. All right. So I am going to print off this number and this number beside a piece of text. So I am going to go print, and I'm going to say num is, now I can use this guy, I can use that guy, which is the comma. I go num, I'm going to put in another piece of text, num2 is comma num2. All right, now, so I'll just make this bigger for a minute so we can see. All right, so we can see that we have the double quotes here. All right. Now, so that is a string. All right. Now, if you want to include, so num, that is what is, num is 50. So it's going to print off 50 there. Then we go num2 is, that's a piece of text. And then outside the 2 double quotation marks, you put in another comma and you put in num2. What's num2? It's 100. So it's going to print out num is 50. Num2 is, sorry, other way around. Num is 100. Num2 is 100. So let me just show you what I mean. So I'll take this guy out of the way. I'm going to run it. Now, so
You changed num in line 75 now.
I did too, yeah, sorry. So it's num is 50, yeah, that's what I want. Actually, what I'll do, I'll swap them around. Hold on. So I will call that num and call that num2. Okay, so this will print off num is 100, num2 is 50. Okay, I'll just show you. Right, so it prints off the string. Prints off the string, num is 100. Now, by doing this little yoke in here, all right, by putting in these 2 commas here, what's actually happening there is that it's converting num into a string, because a print statement can only take a string. So actually what it's doing is it's saying that this is a string. Then it sees, right, so what is num? Num is that guy. And then it changes 100 into that guy. So after that point, num is no longer a number. It is now a string that contains those characters. And then it goes to num2 is, it takes the value of num2, it's going to be 50. So all of that, a print statement can only take a string, okay? A print statement can only take a string. So that means that this is no longer a number, all right? Now, if I tried, for instance, to do some addition inside it, right. What happens there? Yeah, I'll take that out for a minute. Okay. I didn't get across what I was trying to do there. All right. Now, so this is a way for us to put a couple of different strings. This is a string. This is a number. This is a string. This is a number. So what will it do? So Control S, Control F11. Come on. So it prints off. Num is that guy. So num is 100. Num2 is num2, which is 50. Okay. Now I'm going to put in a comment for that. Just give me a second. Number is, so I'll make a simpler one before that. So I go print. Num is num. Okay. So num is 100. So I'm going to put in a comment above this. So this is our comment. And I will make that a bit smaller. Now, so to incorporate different elements into a print statement, we separate each of the elements by a comma. Here, this prints off number is 100. Notice how the piece of text number is separated from the variable num by a comma. Now, if I didn't put in a comma, and if I just said that, it just prints off num is num. All right. In order for you to recognize it as a variable, you have to put it outside of the string. Is everyone with me so far? Yes? Does everyone agree with that? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. I know some of you know this already, but I'm assuming I have to set the baseline is no one knows nothing about it. Okay. Right. So num is num. All right. So prints. And notice how it's nearly all comments. Prints. And I'll change that to number. Okay. Prints. Number is 100. Okay. And there's a, don't need that. Now, I don't need it. So you just put it, print number is 100. You have a comma after the string. Okay. Now, this is actually the right way to do it is the following. Okay. This is the right way to do it. You go print and I go num is number with concatenator. Big word. Okay, it's a big word, but it's a simple symbol. That is actually the right way to put in a number into a print statement. I'm not going to fully explain it yet because obviously it's a bit more complicated. Now that is called casting. All right, that is called casting. What you're actually, so this is the actual right way to put a number into a print statement. All right, because using this way, this is creating something called a tuple. Okay, this is a tuple, and what a tuple is a list. All right, so this is a list containing that string, that number, that string, and that number. All right, when you put in those commas, that is something called a tuple. We will be covering tuples in the next lecture. Okay, now to those that are wondering what the hell are tuples, they are something like an array. All right, a tuple is like an array. All right, it's not quite a list. Some of you might be familiar from array lists. It's not quite an array list. It's not quite an array. It's kind of like a halfway house. What it actually is, it's a list. Okay, now this is the right way to concatenate something. Now you'll notice that the plus symbol here, this is not the addition symbol. In this case, it's something called a concatenator. Again, this is common across all computer programming languages. When you have the plus symbol with two numbers, okay, that is the addition operator. All right. When you have the plus symbol with two strings, now you obviously can't add up hello to there. They're not numbers. All right. So Python and most programming languages are smart enough to know that when you have two strings, you're not asking to do some sort of addition. You're trying to stick the two of them together. And that's what a concatenator is. Okay. A concatenator is just used for sticking two pieces of text together. All right. So what's happening here is this is a string. Okay. And then we want to stick num onto it here, but we have to change it to be a string. If I did this, if I try to use the concatenator without that guy there, I get an error. Okay, because a print statement on a single line can only take a string. That guy is not a string. Now, if you don't understand that, there's no problem because we are going to cover casting next week. Okay, But for now, the easiest way to print out various different elements is, so I'll just, is this guy, print number is no. That is the easiest way to print off numbers and text. Is everyone with me so far? Yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this guy here. So this, the comma after each element. Now think of, so the comma has to be after the string, has to be after the number, has to be after here. Okay. You don't put a comma at the end. All right. The comma after each element here creates something called a tuple, okay, which will be covered next week. But for now, we will just say this is a handy way to print out multiple different things on the one line of text. Okay. All right. So, and this guy here, this is a concatenator. So this guy will not compile. Okay. If you want it to compile, you have to go str num. That is basically turning the string into, or the number into a string. It's str. Now, this is concatenator. Okay, so this is a concatenator. Which is the correct way to display numbers. Right now, here's another thing as well. When I say the correct way, I don't know, is there a correct way to do anything on computer programming? The whole idea of computer programming is very flexible, and Python has very little rules. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. All right. When you're learning it, it's a good thing. When you're doing a lot more complicated, when you're doing more complicated things, it's not such a great thing. All right. Because if you don't have any rules, your code can look like a mess for a start. And as well, to do more complicated things, it's, yeah. But you'll see.
It makes it more difficult to interface your code with other developers' code.
Well, yes, it can.
Yeah.
But like, if you're doing your code, for a start anyway, there is no interfaces in Python, right? Now, interfaces, to those who don't know what they are, they're just kind of like a template of what you want you could call them a template of what you want your program to do. Okay. And if you have an interface, it has to follow these rules. There is no interfaces in Python. All right. So that kind of follows on because there isn't an awful lot of rules. All right. So if you are going to be handing your code off to someone else, they're going to be using probably something called a framework. A framework is like a scaffold on which you, what's scaffold? A scaffold for a house is a framework where you build your house around it. Well, a framework is the same thing. All right. So they're usually going to be using some sort of framework, or they're going to be using some sort of set of rules. Because if you don't have some set of rules or some sort of framework, pardon my language, you can literally fire any sort of shite on the screen and it'll work. All right. Python is very, very forgiving. You can do, there's a lot of things you can do on Python you can't do in other programming languages, which is grand and everything. But then it can be very hard to find out if something goes wrong in your code. It can be difficult to find out. Okay. Also, unless you're very, very regimental and sure of yourself, you'll put in comments everywhere. Right? You'll forget to put in comments. Python is just, it's so loosely typed, your code can look terrible. It can work, but no one can figure it out. Even yourself. You could write something today, you could come back tomorrow and you're looking at it and you won't have a clue what it does. all right? If you don't comment it, because remember, we're just working with one file here. In reality, you're never going to be doing that. You're always going to be working with multiple modules, all right? And you could be pulling some data from some other file, and you haven't put it down here. This is pulling the PPS number for all our employees from an Excel spreadsheet. If you don't put that down there, and if the Excel spreadsheet isn't on your machine, then you don't know. Okay, so you always have to, you should comment. But even with that, Python, sorry, what did you say there again? Who was that talked there a minute ago?
Me, it's James here. Yeah.
James. And what did you say, James?
Well, it's just about interfacing your code to other developers' code. It's a big project, that kind of thing, you know.
No, that is a problem with Python.
Yeah.
That is a huge problem. Now, funny as I said, you should use, funny you use the word interface, because with, let's say, the main programming language I would have more familiarity with is Java and C#. They both use something called interfaces.
Now, I meant the word interface in a loose sense.
Yeah.
Maybe the correct word should have been integrate.
No, but you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to interface and integrate both.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's very forgiving to write. I mean, you can literally. I was even, let's say, when I was doing the course, I have it all done out here. I have another screen here, and when I was just typing, I was surprised at the things you could type up in it, and it still runs. All right. If you even attempted to do anything like it in Java, for instance, your machine would go on fire nearly. All right. It's very, very forgiving. And that's grand when you're learning. The problem is then it can encourage bad habits as well. All right. It can also, your code can be very, very messy, extremely messy. So as I'm going along, I'm going to be using object-oriented programming, all right? And I'm going to be imposing a structure on the way we type code, all right? I'm not, you could literally put everything in that file. You could put everything in this file, and you could have 1,000,000 lines of code in that file. You could, no problem, all right? But we're not going to be doing this. We're going to be creating something called classes. We're going to have our own classes, and we're going to have only one class per file. Now that's not, you don't have to do that in Python, but I'm going to do it. But yes, James, to cut a long story short, yes, integration is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that being said, there is things called, have you all heard of the term API?
Application Programming Interface.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's exactly what it says in the tin. So what it is, it's basically, let's say I want to integrate with, I have, let's say, for instance, most apps you have on your phone, they are not going to be written in one programming language. They're going to have a bit of Java in them. They're going to have a bit of C# in them. They're going to have a bit of MySQL, and they're going to have a little bit of Python in them. So they have to talk to each other, all right? Now, they usually talk to each other by using something called APIs. And what they basically, how they work is it considers the Java component a black box. And what does a black box do? You just put something in and you get something out, all right? So it only cares about what comes out of it, all right? So that's the whole idea of APIs. So let's say you have a Java part of your program. You want to get all the PPS numbers of everyone in Ireland out of the Java part of that program. That's all that comes out. You don't care how it works as long as you get it out. All right. Then the Python part would be analyzing that data to get all those under the age of 25 who could be susceptible to the coronavirus. Sorry for bringing up the coronavirus. Jesus. All right. So that's the Python now. So all the Python is doing there is just getting out a number. You don't care how it gets that number, but it's just getting the number out. That's the whole idea of APIs. When you're talking about APIs, APIs are simply just what comes, it's like a plug on the wall, okay? You want the Java part to get all the PPS numbers of everyone in Ireland. The Python part then takes all the PPS numbers of everyone in Ireland and finds out those under 25 who could be susceptible to the coronavirus. All right. That's what APIs are. That's how you integrate things. All right. Now, but Python itself can be very, very messy. All right. We've only got a couple of lines of code and already it's looking a bit. All right. So it can be messy. All right. Now, so this is a concatenator. So more about this in next week's lecture. Okay. So I will be talking about concatenators. I will be talking about casting in next week's lecture. And I will also be talking about something called tuples. All right. But the easiest way for now is just to put a comma after each item. Okay. It's just to put a comma after each item. So as well as putting in numbers. So let's say we have, I'm going to put them in here again. Num is equal to 100. Num is equal to 50. All right. So I'm going to go. Num is here. Come on. Num is num. Hold on, that should be num2. Num2 is num2. And sum is now. So I put in the comma and then I go num plus num2. Oops, shit. Right, so we can see what's happening here. So num is, it takes the value of num, which is 100, puts in 100 here. Then it prints off num is. Then it takes the value of num2, which is 50. Sum is. Then it's going to add up whatever num is and num2, and it gives us 150. Now, the beauty of variables is you can change the values. So I'm going to change that to 5,679 and 12,451. Okay, so now it takes up those two numbers and it changes them. So variables, the values can change. So that means your answers can change. It can means you want to calculate someone's PAYE. Okay, you're looking at your wage packet, you're saying, oh Jesus, look at all that PAYE. They're all calculated by using these guys. Okay, there is going to be, now they'll probably use something called Sage, but there is going to be a variable somewhere called PAYE. And that number is going to be totally dependent on several other numbers. Okay, so your PAYE, now that's to those that aren't necessarily from Ireland, PAYE is it's a tax. Okay, it's a tax. So your PAYE is calculated based on your wages. And the wages for everyone is going to be different. So your PAYE is going to be different. So you have a wages here, it's going to give you a different readout for a different person. So the whole idea of variables is variables can change. Okay, variables can change. So put it in here, variables can change, and you can include calculations in print statements. Oops. Okay. Now, that's one way of doing it. So I want to add up those two numbers. And as I can say, I'll say here, change these numbers to see change these numbers to see how the sum also changes. Okay. Now, so this will print out the sum of num and num2. Now, That's one way of doing any sort of calculations. However, if you're going to be doing calculations, I always recommend you create another variable. So we're going to create a variable called sum. And what's that going to be? It's going to be, now remember that we see num, the machine sees that number. We see num2, the machine sees that number. So when I come along here and I put in num plus num2. Now see what I mean by, you should always read from the right hand side first. Okay, you read from the right hand side first. So you do that guy first. You add up those two numbers and it gives you 18,130. Okay, it gives you 18,130. And I come along then and I say print sum of the two numbers is sum. Okay, 18,000. Now you can do it, that's fine. All right. I find this more readable. All right, it's up to yourselves. You're coming along. I usually, and it's probably more done than not, is if you're doing some sort of calculation, you assign the product of that calculation to a new variable. All right. Now, all that's doing is it's taking whatever number that is and adding it to that number. So that means sum can change. So I'll change the numbers. So I'll change this number here to, just type numbers at random. Okay. And I'll type in another number. There we have it. That is 107,796. All right. So whatever number, so here, I'm going to say here, you can create a new variable by adding up. Okay. Now, I'll be honest, I think this technique, so this technique is preferred. You're going to get the same answer, all right? This is going to give you the same answer as this, all right? This is more readable, all right? Short code isn't always necessarily good code. Usually, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, okay? It's no harm to put in an extra step. It forces it because it's easy enough. If you've got a load of other things in that line, it's easy enough not to see that. And remember, I have the code. The code looking like this, looking big, but normally it's going to be this size. Let me just show you. Hold on. Normally, your screen is going to be that size. All right, because you're going to have a lot of screens, you're going to have a lot of code. So normally it's going to be that size. And it's very easy to miss out the plus symbol there. You can see it's a separate line. Your eye is drawn to that. That's, oh shit. Oops, hold on a second. Sorry about that now. I have to go mad here. All right. So it's very easy to miss out the plus symbol here. This is on a separate line. In actual fact, the code could be even smaller than that. It could be something like that size. Well, actually, that's a bit too small. Okay. So it is going to be usually smaller than that. So I just have it this big so it's easy for us to see. All right. Now, is there any questions so far?
No,
No questions? Everyone's okay with that?
fine, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, so Now, just a little bit about numbers. All right, so I'm going to create a number here. Now, you can't have commas in a number. Okay. Now, that is not a number. That's actually a tuple. It's a list. All right. Now, the problem with that is you have 1,000,000. 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's hard to make out that that's 1,000,000. And when you go to 1,000,000,000, trillion. All right. Would you ever use trillions and billions? Yes, you would. When you come to encryption, when you come to, if, for instance, after the first 2 weeks, you are going to have to sign into this website I set up myself, and you'll be given a username and a password. Okay. Now, the passwords aren't stored in the database. What's actually stored in the database is a really, 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 really big number that translates into your password. All right. So passwords should never be stored in a database. What's stored in a database is this number that's going to be 128,000 digits long. All right. Whatever number that is. All right. But I'm kind of going out. I digress there a bit. It's hard to make out that that's a trillion. All right, so what you need to do is, what we usually do is normally is that, but you can't use that in computer programming. What you can use, and this is common across all programming languages, is an underscore. Okay, that's a trillion. I don't know if that'll actually, let me just see. I don't know if Python can take that number. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay, now we can see there's 1, 2, that's 1,000,000. 9 is 1,000,000,000. 12 is a trillion. Okay, so we can use underscores in a number instead of commas. Okay, now, so a couple of rules for variables. So I go here, print, empty line, print, variable rules. Okay, so print. So a variable must start with a letter or an underscore character. Now, underscore characters are used more in Python than in other programming languages. I don't know why. So what do I mean by that? So let's say I go underscore a fruit. Okay, equal to. Now I am going to go apple. Now this is assigning that variable. A minute now. Okay, now. So it's assigning that string to that variable. So underscore a fruit is going to be, what the, sorry, it's the dog. Underscore a fruit is going to be that string apple. That's allowed. I do one beneath it. I go fruit is equal to orange. That's also allowed. Okay, and I'll print off both of them. Print. I can go fruit plus underscore a fruit. So we can see orange apple. Okay, so what does that print? That prints now, when you have a variable, you don't put double quotation marks around a variable. Okay, you just put them in as, now they're both two strings, so you can use this guy. This guy is a concatenator. When you have two strings, the plus symbol is a concatenator. Okay, just joins up the two strings. Okay, so underscore a fruit is, I'll change it. This is an apple, and I put a space before it. And this one, this is an orange. And so it prints off, this is an orange, this is an apple. Is everyone okay with that so far? Yes? Yes?
Yes, yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Now, so a variable, now also a convention. Now in Python, they use a lot of this sort of thing. All right. They go underscore apple is equal to all right. So in Python, I don't know why they're mad on doing it because I don't like them. You'll see variables that look like this. Come on. Okay, you see variables that look like underscores. Personally, I don't like them. Okay, but it is legal to do that. Now, also in computer programming, let's say you want to get the age of a person. All right, so you could have a variable called age, and that'd be equal to 45. Yeah, yeah, right. But then let's say in your program you have a dog. So you can't go age, and the dog's age is 5. But the thing is, that's the one variable. So here it's at 45, here it's at 5. So what you need is you need two separate variables, one for the person's age and one for the dog's age. So what you do is you call it a different name, DOG. Now, this uses something called camel case notation. Okay, now camel case notation is you always, now you don't have to do this, but it's a convention to use it. Okay, most computer programmers would use this convention. What you usually do is you usually start off your, now a convention means you don't have to do it, but it's something that's commonly done. So this is called camel case. Okay, so your variable always starts off with lowercase. Okay, now if it's something like dog age, oh, by the way, as well, I should have mentioned this, variables can't have spaces. Okay, should have said that. Variable names can't have spaces. Okay, so that won't compile. So what will compile is that. Now, that to me looks like the word doggage. All right, whereas that, you can clearly see it's dog age. So if you have variable names, it's important to give your variable name something that means something. Don't ever call something that, or don't call something always give your variable a name that means something. All right. If you have a program that's taking in fruit, for instance, if you go into Tesco, or Lidl or whichever one of them, you'll get your 5 apples, and you'll put them in a bag and you'll put them on the weighing scale and you'll press apples. What's behind that? There is a program behind that. And actually could be done in Python. There's going to be a variable called fruit. Okay. Fruit can be an apple, can be an orange, can be a pineapple, and you'll probably have another variable called, so you'll have a variable called fruit, and you'll have another variable called fruit AMT. So that is the type of fruit you have to put on the weighing scale. That's the amount of fruit you've put on the weighing scale. And you'd have another variable in called fruit weight. Okay, so you give your variables names that mean something. You'll see a lot now if you're looking stuff up online, and I have 2 books in the folder as well, by the way. Okay, they're pretty much the 2 best Python books there is. All right, so there is 2 Python books in the folder as well there for you. They'll do a lot of this. They'll say x is equal to 4, y is equal to 10. X and y are terrible variable names. The only time you should use x and y is when you're talking about a straight line that's going to represent x, y. Isn't y perpendicular, x is across, is it?
Yes, that's the convention is right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's the only time you should use x and y. Every other time, you'd be surprised people who are at this years, they still use friggin' x and y and a and z. Now, we are going to be using this type of variable right now. We are going to be using I and j, all right? But we're only going to be using those variables under particular circumstances. We're going to use them in something called a loop. Okay, I and j in most computer programming languages are something called a counter. All right, so the only time we're going to be using variables that are going to be called by one name is when we're inside something called a loop, and they're going to use something called a counter, and our variables inside there, right, are going to be called I and j. And they're only used in specific circumstances. So, you know, when you see I, you know, that's a loop. You know, when you see j, that's a loop. Okay. So when you're creating variables, give them a name that means something. Okay. Don't ever go. So variable names can't have spaces. Make sure variable names mean something. Okay, and so XYZ equal to 78 means nothing to me. Okay, now, so that won't compile. All right, but this will. Is equal to 6. Now, this is Camel case notation. Okay, Camel notation is lowercase start, and so we can say that dog and age is 2 separate words, but we shove them together. And to show that it's 2 different words is we have a capital on the second word. Does everyone understand that? Yeah? So lowercase to start every new word.
Does the term camel case come from the fact that because you've got an uppercase letter in the middle of the variable declaration? It's
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah. Oh, well spotted. I never thought of that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. So yeah. But by the way, you can have more than one word in it. So let me think now.
Well, depending on whether you go to the Sahara or to go by desert, a camel can have 1 or 2 humps.
I know exactly. Yeah. That's well spotted there, James, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just I never thought of it now. So you learn something new every day. Okay. Yeah. So camel lowercase and every new word is uppercase. Now, of course, you could also do this. Now, there are different variables. So that is dog underscore age. Now, I don't think that's as readable as that. That's just my personal, because maybe it's because I'm used to it. I'm more used of that rather than that. Now, it's up to yourselves. You can use either. Now, so you can't call a variable. You can have spaces in a variable. You can have numbers in a variable. Is equal to 5. Okay, so they can be at the middle, or they can be at the end, but they can't be at the start. Okay, so variables can have numbers. Variable names can have numbers anywhere except start. Okay, so this will compile, this will not compile. Okay, so I'll do a few other ones. And I'll do a few more down here. So now, variable names can only contain numbers, letters, and underscores. Okay, that's all they can contain. If they contain anything else, it will not compile. So let's say if I go fruit star 4 A, and I say that's a strawberry. Won't compile. Okay, so you can only use contain letters, or numbers. That's 0 to 9. That's all the numbers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Letters, A to Z, A to Z, and underscores, which is this dude. Now, it doesn't take dollar signs. So let's say we go for dollar, fruit, dollar is equal to 56. Doesn't work. Fruit, pound, a minute now, shift, pound, also doesn't work. Now, just this is an error now that crops up, right? And you are going to come across it. If you put a pound symbol, so let's just put in a piece of text here. Now, if I put in, go away. Now, when I said before, anything that's put inside a double quotation marks is considered to be a string. That's true up to a point. However, if you put in symbols inside a string that it does not recognize, you'll get this error down here. Okay, a non-UTF-8 code. All it's saying is it doesn't recognize that guy. It doesn't recognize the pound symbol. It also doesn't recognize the euro symbol. Okay, so it doesn't recognize the euro symbol, but as far as I know, it does recognize the dollar symbol, of course. Why wouldn't it? All right. Now, but variable names. Variable names can only be made up of numbers, letters, and underscores. All right. Your variable name can start with a number, but it can start with an underscore. Fruit is equal to pineapple or strawberry. Okay. Oops. Yeah. Okay. Right. Now. So is everyone okay? Will I keep on going or do you want a break?
Keep on going, maybe.
Yeah, keep on going. I should have a 5-minute break at the hour and a half, but it's only 50 minutes left now, so I might as well keep on going. All right. Now, so print, put in the space. Now, So print Python is case then. Okay, Python is case sensitive. All right, some other programming languages aren't, but Python is. All right, now what does that mean? That means that num is a different variable to num. Okay, so these are two totally different variables. Print to prove that they are. Print num is num and capital NUM is right. They're two different variables. All right. So because if there's any differentiation between the cases, they're two different variables. All right. So that guy is not the same as that guy. And it's also not the same as go away. That's also, so this is one variable. A different variable. And a different variable. Okay, so those are three different variables. Okay, so everyone with me so far, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, as well, this variable here is only available from this point onwards. Okay, it's not available up here. You can't go backwards. All right, so if I try to access this variable up here, so if I go, no, it's no, get an error. It's not defined. You can't access something until it actually exists, which makes sense. Do you understand that? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take, oops. Yeah. Okay, it's good stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to take that out. So I'll actually comment out this line entirely. And I'll put in, so as you can see, I'm not deleting lines, I'm just commenting it out. Okay, so I'll take that guy out. I'll put it in here and access a variable until it's created. Now, that's fine. That makes sense. Okay, naturally. Now, from people coming from other programming languages, it's slightly different. That when we come to something called classes, if we create a variable inside a class, it's only available after you create it. Now, those that haven't done other programming languages don't understand that. Those that have done programming languages before, they might even understand that either. All right, but I will explain it when I come to it. All right, but so num can be accessed. Capital in lowercase um can be accessed up here. Can be accessed here. Why? Because it's not created yet. Okay, so down here, num is equal to 200. It's a different variable. Okay, now, so we're on the home straight anyway for today. Now, I'll just put in a long comment here and I'll read it out. Okay, so now this is where Python starts to diverge from other programming languages. So Python is a loosely typed language, which basically means that it has less rules about what you can and cannot do. Okay, one of the corollaries of this, that should be corollaries, is that Python variables do not have a particular type. For instance, in the above variable num, I'll just put it down here again. Num is equal to 200. Change it, or 400. So, yeah, particularly in the above variable, one of the qualities is the Python variable do not have a particular type. For instance, the above variable num, in languages such as Java and C#, you would have to define a type of integer for this variable, and that would mean you could only assign a number to this variable. However, with Python, variables don't have a type, so we can assign a string to num. Right, now what that means is, so we start off with num being a number. I print it off. It's a number. Right, everyone with me so far, yeah?
Mhm.
Yes? Right, now, then I come along and I change it to num is equal to, this is now a piece of text. So I go print num is, and I put after it, num is now a piece of text. That is not the case with other programming languages. All right. And you might think, yeah, that's great. Sure, I can slap up anything there. Problem is then it's hard to keep track of what that should be. Okay. Because if it can be a number in one line, and it can be a piece of text in another line, and it can be something called an object in another line, it could be something called an array in another line. It can get, yeah.
Recipe for chaos, you'd say.
Yes, it is a recipe for chaos.
Yeah.
Now, it's actually hard enough in Python to ensure that that will always be a number. It's not that easy to do, okay? Now, it's not excessively easy in other languages. Well, it is easy in other languages. In Java, all you have to do is you would go int num is equal to 78. Now, when you create that number, that can only be a number from that point forward. It can't be anything else. If you try to assign a string to it, it will not compile. Whereas here, you can assign a string to it. You can assign, there's another thing. First time I'm going to show it to you, something called a Boolean. Now, a Boolean is one of two values, true or false. So we can say num is equal to true. That's a Boolean. Or is it capital T-R-U-E? Yeah. Okay, so num here is a number. So num starts off as a number, then a piece, then a string, and then becomes a Boolean. Now, these guys are used in, we're going to be using them. We won't get to it today now, the next day. We use them in something called if statements. Okay. Now, so the main, if you print off num, it's just going to print off the word true. Now, but it's not the string true. A Boolean can be either true or false. Okay. It can be one of two states. So num is, it's going to print off the words. Num, it's not a string, it's a Boolean. I probably won't get to them now either today. No, I won't. All right, so I'm going to put in a bit here. So I'll put in a comment. Now, the main problem with this, of course, is that it's pure chaos. This facet of Python has advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage is this allows for rapid development and rapid learning of Python. You could, believe it or not, now I wouldn't say yourselves could do it. If you put your mind down to it, you probably could learn Python in as little as a week to 2 weeks. All right. Now, there's a lot of the ins and outs that you still wouldn't know, but you could learn the basics of it in 1 to 2 weeks. Now, the major downside of this is that it can be incredibly messy. Okay. And also it can be incredibly difficult to read, even what you did yourself yesterday. All right. Because you can basically put anything anywhere. All right. Now, another thing as well, funnily enough, is that you have less control over your code. There's less things you can do. All right. The likes of C#, you can literally, and Java as well, you can literally do anything with a set of rules. Whereas here, there isn't too many rules, but it sounds almost counterintuitive. This allows you less control sometimes. All right. But the main problem is it's messy. It can be very, very messy, and it can be very, very difficult to read, particularly if you're starting off like most of you are here. You can learn bad habits. If you have bad habits, you can be writing a piece of code. You might understand it today. You might understand it tomorrow. Come back in a week's time. You're not going to understand it. And definitely someone else is looking at your code is not going to understand it either. All right. So one of the ways around that is comment everything, number one. Two, always use something we're going to be using, classes. And also now, I don't know if we'll have time to do it, use some sort of framework. A framework just imposes set rules. So you can only do certain things set ways. All right. So it imposes set rules. It's a framework. You've got your framework for your house, so you just build around your house. All right. But it also enforces rules on you as well. All right. Now, so you can also do this. Now, this is really messy, actually, but you can do it. So I go num2, num3 is equal to 45, 67, 150. Okay. So what we've done there is we have defined 3 variables. Okay. You can define multiple variables on the one line and give them values on the one line. Well, you have to give them once you declare, sorry, that should be num3. So we have num2, and num3. Okay. So then I am going to print them off. Now I'm going to use the concatenators this time. Num is, so I'm going to go plus str num plus num2 is. Now when you're using the concatenator, I need to go like that, is plus str num2, oops, plus str, oops, sorry, plus num3 is guy, str. Now, oh, right. And num is so space here and space here. So now these are using concatenator, and the concatenator, think of it like glue. Okay, so this is a string. It's going to glue this guy onto this guy. Now num is a number. So if I just put in plus num, now as num is a number, what happens here is this is a string. This is a number. So Python, now this is not the case in all programming languages. This is just kind of a Python specific thing. It doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know whether this should be are we adding up? This is a string, this is a number. So if it was just 2 numbers, it'd add them up. If it was just 2 strings, it'd stick the 2 strings together. However, this is a string and a number, so it doesn't know what to do with it. Okay, that's the main problem there. It doesn't know what that symbol is supposed to be doing, because that can mean addition, or it can mean something called a concatenator. Now, concatenator is just sticking things together. So it doesn't know which one it is. So what you do is we do something called casting. Okay. Now what casting is doing is changing from one data type to another. All right. So it's changing from one data type to another. Now, in other programming languages, it's not recommended that you use it too much. In Python, you have to use it. You have no choice no matter you use it. All right, so what it's doing there is it's taking the number 45, okay, and it's changing it to that. So it goes num plus the string that contains the number 4 and 5, num2 plus this number changes it to the string 6 and 7, plus num3 is string num3, which is the string 120. So that is using a concatenator. Now, as I said, we will be coming back to casting next week. Casting is a lot more important in Python than in most programming languages. The official, for instance, if you're using Java or C#, they will say, do not use casting unless you can avoid it. No.
It's
Don't
considered
Yes,
in the more stricter typed
Yeah.
programming languages, it's considered bad practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's lazy.
Yeah.
It's lazy. It's as simple as that. All right. However, in Python, there's something you can't do without it. You have to use it.
Yeah. As well as being lazy from a programming point of view, it's seen as potentially dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely is. Okay. Because no, you definitely don't want to do that. Because you have something that's supposed to be a number and then it's a string, and no. But in Python, you can't get away from it. Right. And this is one of the criticisms I have it. You're forced to do this shite. There's only a word to describe it. Okay. So yes, it is considered dangerous, but you have to use it, unfortunately, with Python.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to get rid of that. So num is str num, num2 is str num2, num3 is str num3. Okay. Now, so you can declare multiple variables of the one type, and you can also do this. Now, this is definitely a recipe for chaos, where I'll just show you it. So we go num, num2, num3. So num1 is going to be the number 100. Num2 is going to be the string hello there. Num3 is going to be float 5.6. I'm going to put in a num4. Num4 is going to be a Boolean, which is going to be false. Num5 is going to be a, I think this, hold on, this is 45, 67, 88. Now that's a list. Okay, so num is the number 100. Num2 is the string hello there. Num3 is the float 5.16. Num4 is the Boolean false. Num5 is, I get mixed up with them. I think that's a list. Okay, that's a list. So we have multiple variables of different types. Now, never, ever do that. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. If you are going to declare multiple variables on the same line, make sure they're all the same type. Don't mix because. What's wrong with that? Can I tell you what's wrong?
If you're got to have a big program, like, how would you keep track of all that? Like?
Exactly. How would you? It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's not even that. Even look at it, it's hard to figure out what the hell is what. For a start, the names are all wrong. Num is 100. Num2 is hello there. Names are all wrong. Also, your different data types. Always keep your data types together. All right. If you're declaring multiple data types, So let's say if you want to declare all of your ints on one line, all of your floats. Now, I personally wouldn't do that. I prefer to go num is equal to 45, num2 is equal to 67, num3 is equal to 120. That's just my personal preference. If you want to do that, fine, knock yourself out. I would prefer to do this one. Num is equal to 45, num2 is equal to 67, num3 is equal to 120. I just find it easy to read. That is easier to read than that. But it's up to yourselves now. But this, you can do it. Okay, so you can take multiple variables in the same line. You can declare print. You can declare multiple variables of different types on the same line. But this is very confusing. Okay, and I'll do this.
No,
Yes, Kieran.
does they have to be, if there wasn't equal items on both sides of the equal sign, would that
Oh
give?
yeah, and that's another thing as well. Yeah. So if you, for a start anyway, you shouldn't be doing 5 different variables on the one line. All right. But if you have 5 on the left hand side and 4 on the right hand side, you get an error. All right. It can be hard enough to figure out, well, what's missing there. All right. So they have to match. People who don't know the programming languages, there's no default values for any variables in Python. That's another thing. Other programming languages do have default values. There is no default values in Python anywhere, which is a bit of a pain in the arse as well. Now, I'm not being critical of it. I'm just pointing out the downsides of it. It's a great language. It's very quick. You can learn it really fast. But that does come with certain things. Namely, it's messy. Namely, you can just tear off into it. Now, to those that tear off, you can just tear off into it and do your coding. That's never a good idea. All right. You should always document what you're doing. Now, it might seem painful to be doing these things, but you should always document and plan. Software development is 90% planning and testing, 10% coding. You want to avoid problems. You don't want problems when you're just around, you're supposed to be launching a big product tomorrow. Okay. So to print off all of these guys, so I go print. Num is, I'm just going to print off a few of them because I'm getting fed up with them. Num2 is num2. Num3 is num3, which is 5.6. Okay, so it's messy as hell. And now, what am I going to say? Okay, I will briefly, let me just see, what's the next one? Okay, I'll briefly start on the next one. Now, I was going to put up assignments for this week, but I don't think, this is just variables. There's nothing really too difficult about them. So I won't bother doing assignments for this week. I'll put up assignments for next week. Is that okay with everyone? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine, yeah.
And the videos will be available. What I'll do, I'll post them up on my Facebook page, and I'll also put them up on the shared folder, and I'll also put them up on the YouTube channel. So they'll be there in 3 different locations. Is that okay?
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So just take out that shite. So I'll start another one. So I'll save that. And remind me 5 minutes from the end as well. I'll show you the zipped file. I'll show you where they're saved to. All right. So now, so I'm going to go in here again. I'm going to go new. I'm going to go other. I'm going to go PyDev project. And this is chap 1.3. Chap 1.3, what did I call it here? I call this variables. Okay, so I'm going to go new, I'm going to go package, I'm going to go Android. And inside here, I'm going to go new, I'm going to go PyDev module, which is a file, and I'm going to call it main. And empty template there. Okay, so I'll close all these other files. Now, right, so I'll put in this comment here. Right, I got print. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. Now, just to show you this different type of print statement. Now, this is a multi-line print statement. I'll put a tick outside here. Now, this is a multi-line print statement. Where are you? Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Python none. Now, another thing of Python is different is indentation matters. All right. Indentation matters. All right. When we come to something called functions, which we will come to in next week's lecture. All right. Functions, to those that are coming from other programming languages, are the same as methods. They're basically the same thing. All right. Now, the one major difference with functions from methods in other programming languages is that there's no curly brackets. All right. Indentation and where your code actually appears on the screen makes a big difference. The first place it makes a difference is here. This is a multi-line print statement. All right. A multi-line print statement is surrounded by either 3 double quotation marks or 3 single quotation marks, which is dot, dot, dot. Okay, so now you'll notice that, so I don't know, for some reason, I just prefer that one. Okay, so 3 quotation marks is a multi-line print statement. Now, everywhere you click return on when you're typing out, so when I type this out, I clicked on Python is loosely typed language. However, there's not to say variables have no types. How no types? Jesus Christ. So I press return here, went on to the next line. As every variable still has a type, but as I already said in previous lecture, a variable on previous slide, on previous file, file, a variable's type can change. Right, so I pressed enter. So where did I bring up me? Shit. Fuck it. Hello, I'm gone off. Fuck it.
Right.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just my internet went down there for a second. Sorry about that. Yeah.
You okay now? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay. So now this is a multi-line. So everywhere I clicked on return, I clicked on return here. I clicked on return here. Yeah, return here. I clicked on return here. I've returned here. Well, I didn't click on the last one. All right. So that's because Python is aware of indents, is aware of you pressing the return key. It does make a difference. So this is a multi-line print statement. So put a comment above it. This is a multi-line print statement. Okay. Which will have either this for text are this, which is 3. Now, everywhere you press the return inside a multi-line print statement is going to be the same in your printout here. All right. Now you'll notice that if you don't put a print statement around a multi-line string, okay, this is a multi-line string. If I do this, now this is a multi-line string that's not, so this is a multi-line string that is not assigned to any variable, okay, or not in a print statement. So it is not printed out. Okay, so this guy here, all by his own. Now, you can assign that to a variable. What do I mean by that? I'd say story. Right? So you can assign a multi-line string to a variable. Yes, does everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so this is that is assigned. That is assigned to a variable. And if put in a print statement, all right. So if I come along here and go print story. Okay, this is a multi-line string that is assigned to a variable, and if put in a print statement, will print out. Okay, so we can see that that is that. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, now if I put in a multi-line string, so this multi-line string is not assigned to any variable or in a print statement, so it will never be displayed. Okay, so technically this is not a comment. All right, it's a multi-line string that's not assigned to any variable, or it's not printed out. So there should be 3. So because there is no multi-line comments in Python, but what they use instead of a multi-line comment is this guy. Now, there is going to be situations though, where if you try to put that in as a comment, it will appear on your screen. All right. Now, it's a very specific set of circumstances. So be careful with using that as a multi-line comment. Make sure that it doesn't print off to your screen, because you never want the end users to see your comments. Do you? Do you? No. Because, right, let's have it right. So you're looking up Netflix. Do you want to see all that shit? You're looking up, your Tinder. You're feeling lonely and you go on to Tinder. You want to Tinder and you see all this crap coming up on the screen. All right? You don't want to see that one. Or sometimes error 404 or some shit like that comes up on your on the more kind of older websites. So you don't want to see the comments come up. So be careful with using these lads, because there is circumstances where they will appear on your screen. They do exist. They're not like a comment. They are not ignored by Python. Python knows they exist, but it doesn't print them off. That's all it is. So this is used as a multi-line comment. Which is fine for most circumstances. But it can possibly print out under certain circumstances. So I'll try and figure one out where it will be printed out. Is that okay, therefore? Yeah. Actually,
Yeah,
I do know one example, but I'd have to explain something else. So I'll explain how putting this in as a multi-line comment is going to print it out to the screen. Okay, is that all right?
No.
Yeah, all right. Now, so the other screens are disappearing. So give me a second. What do I have in this other screen? All right, so here we have our variables. So just to go, my var is equal to 45. Okay, my var is equal to, this is a string. My var is equal to 4.5. My var equal to true. Okay, so my var can be so print my var can be any type at any stage. And as I say, it's a recipe for chaos. There's no doubt about that. So it can be a number, be a whole number in, they're called ints. It can be string, can be a float, number with decimals, can be a Boolean. True or false. Now there's another type of thing there. It's called an object. Okay, we won't be covering that until next week. Okay, so it can be anything at any time. All right. So now Python. So I just need to modify this comment here. To the next line. Python is made up of a number of data types. Now, so this is coming from other, if you're coming from other programming languages, there's another thing as well. Python has no primitive data types. Now, to use that, don't understand that that's fine, but for those that come from other programming languages, everything in Python is a Java. Everything in Python is an object, even numbers. Okay.
Even Booleans.
Yeah. Everything is a number. Everything is an object, even Booleans. Okay.
Yeah.
So everything is an object. Now, that's a big difference from other programming languages. All right.
Yeah.
That is a very big difference.
So Python, it's inherently an object-oriented.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
From it's designed from the bottom up.
Yeah, it's object-oriented the whole way through.
Is
like we'd say like the way C++ is the object-oriented extension of C.
C, yeah.
Yeah, Python is just object-oriented completely.
Yeah, it is. So now I will be explaining to those that don't know what object-oriented program or object is. I will be explaining it. All right. This is just those that are already familiar with it. Everything in Python is an object. All right. Now there is three basic types of numbers. There's three basic types of numbers. Right? There's int, float, and complex. I'm not going to do complex. All right. I'm just not going to do them.
No, it's only very specialized mathematical and scientific applications require complex numbers.
Yeah, it drives all cracked. We'd be here months trying to figure them out. So I'm not.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to do ints and floats. Okay. So I'm going to print numbers. Okay. Print. These are ints. All right. So what's an int? Print. This is a whole number with no decimal places. Okay. So num is equal to 45. This is an int. Num is equal to 18. This is also an int. Okay, nothing complicated at all about that. All right. So the next type we're going to do print. Put in a statement. Print. We go float. So put dash dash dash. Float. So sometimes called doubles in other programming languages, but it's called. So this is a number with decimal places. Okay. Now, so for instance, if num is equal to 3 pi, or no, pi 3.4, wages is equal to, we'll say big wages. Okay, total. Now, whenever you divide a number, it's automatically a float. Okay, so print. Whenever you use division in a calculation, the result will be a float, regardless of the number. So I go here, total. So 2 divided by 3 gives us 0.6666. Oh, Jesus, that's the mark of Satan. So we definitely don't want that. Okay. So 0.333333. Okay. I am not going to bother with complex. Let me just see. Okay. So let me just see what I've done here. All right. So now, I'm going to do, what time is it? Actually, I don't think I have time to do this. Right, so to recap. So I was going to spend the last couple of minutes recap what we've done. It's a simple enough thing what we did this week. All right, we start off with comments. Nothing difficult there in comments. There is actually only one type of comment in Python. It's the use the that class. What do you call that again? What do you call that thing again?
Hashtag.
Hashtag. Christ, I should know that. Okay, so hashtag Jesus. Okay, so they're ignored. Now, you can use these guys, okay, as a multi-line comment. But be careful of using them. Now, they're not exactly comments. They are what are called, they are multi-line strings that are not printed off and that are not assigned to anything. That means you'll never see them. But there is circumstances where they will be viewed. All right. So you have to be careful with using them. So if you want to use a multi-line comment, you can use that. So you can have 3 double quotes at the start, 3 double quotes in between. Everything in between is not going to be treated as code. It's going to be treated as a string, but it's not assigned to anything. And it's not in a print statement. So no one's going to see it. Okay. Well, that's the theory anyway. So they're all. So then we did our first function, which was called print. And you put a string inside a function and you can put it. Now that is a single line string. That's a single line string, but you can also put in a multi-line string. Okay, so put in multi-line. Hello there. Nice to meet you all. Are a good. Okay, so it can be single line or multi-line. We next went in on to variables, declaring variables, giving them a value. The value goes on the right-hand side, the name, the reference goes on the left-hand side, and we use the assignment operator. You read from right to left. Variables, the whole idea of variables is you can change values. And you can use variables. If it's a number, then you can use it exactly as you would a number. So you can use addition. Then if you want to put in if you want to put in a string and a number, you can use these guys here, which is actually called a tuple, which is a list, but it's just a handy way for you to print off everything in the one line. So to print off num is whatever the value of num is, which is 100, num2, which is the value, which is 50 up here. You can also do calculations. So this will add up those two numbers. You can change those two numbers. And if you change those two numbers, the product of this is going to change as well. What is probably more useful to use is if you create a new variable, and the new variable called sum is going to be the product of num and num2. All right. So that will print off those two numbers added up together, which will be 107,000. You can put underscores in a number, but you can't put in commas. Okay, a variable must start with either a letter or an underscore. It can't start with a number. All right, did I say that? Or an underscore. This one here, that one works fine. So you can't have spaces. You also can't have a number at the start. All right, 1xy will not compile, means nothing to me, and begins with a number. Nothing to me and begins with a number. So you can use camel case notation, or I don't know what that is. They call that some other notation. I don't know. Okay, so you can have numbers, you can't have there. All right, so fruit1, fruit fr81t, that is fine. Okay, Python is case sensitive, so capital inum is different from lowercase inum. Now Python is a loosely typed language, so you don't have to define a type. That also means that you can have 1 minute it can be a number, the next minute it can be a string, the next minute it can be a Boolean, next minute it can be a float. All right, you can declare multiple values for multiple variables on the same line. You can also have multiple variables and multiple values, and they could be different types. Would not recommend you do that because that is very hard to keep track of. Doesn't matter how diligent you are. If you have a lot of that, you are going to get lost. Simple as that. There's no two ways about it. All right. Then we just started on numbers. Whole numbers are ints, and then we started on numbers which are floats. Now, anyone, any questions? Any questions?
No, fine, no.
I see a lot of people have left, so they got tired, hungry, or whatever. So anyway, that's our first one. Now the next one will also be on Zoom because whatever happened website's majorly wrong with it, and Register 365 is trying to figure out what's wrong with it. So it'll be also on Zoom next week. So I'll send you a link on it next week, and I will zip up these files and put them in the Google Drive folder, in the code folder. One will be called Chap 1.1 Comments. Another one will be called Chap 1.2 Variables Introduction. Another one will be called Chap 1.3. And this video will be in the videos folder under the name Lecture 1. It'll also be on my Facebook page. It'll also be on the YouTube channel. Is that okay, everyone?
Perfect.
Okay, so I know it's simple enough this week, but you know, it's no use in starting off and really difficult stuff to start off with. So next week we'll be doing if statements, we'll be doing what else? Loops. Then we'll be doing the different types of, we'll be doing lists, tuples, sets. Now we're not going to be doing arrays because arrays we have to import them, and I want to cover importing libraries first before we do arrays. So this is for people who don't know the programming language. You might ask, how come we're not doing arrays to start off with? Because they're not a part of Python. You have to import them basically. All right. But anyway, that'll be next week anyway. So folks, the video will probably up tonight. I doubt you're going to be watching the video tonight anyway. So if it's not up tonight, it'll be up tomorrow morning. Is that okay?
Perfect.
So we'll see you all next week, and I'll send you an email the night before, as before, with the location of where the second lecture will be. Okay, so we'll see you all tomorrow, folks.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
See you, folks.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.